Howdy. How's it going? Good. It's the last one. I didn't do any certificates. I know, I made. Okay, you guys ready to get started? Did someone just say no? It was Debbie! Debbie's always a troublemaker, isn't she? I mean, hi, Debbie. Okay, so last time we talked about basically becoming students of our kids, seeing how they're unique, what makes them tick, what are their interests, what is it that they absolutely love, and then I challenged you to actually share that with your kids, and then I was curious, did anybody do it, and then did anybody actually share it with their children, and what were their reactions? Everyone's like, I didn't have time. I had too many political calls. Yeah.
I did a couple. Like, I noticed that Cora she has, the best laugh ever. And, when you hear it in the background or in the room, I just love that. So, that was one of the things. And the other was that she has a tendency to be, she's really, really sweet and thoughtful when she really wants to be.
Yeah.
So sometimes she really turns it on, sometimes not. Well, it's not very directed at me very often. So I did tell her that. I said that I was looking at my book and I said, can I tell you a couple of things? And then she goes, oh, what else? So she was like, oh, and then she was like, interested, but proud of herself.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So I must not tell her enough positive things. I must correct too much.
This is what I've learned about myself. I'm like, well, they should just know, I mean, they know I love them, right? But yeah, to actually have them, to talk to them about the things that you notice, it means everything to them.
Right, she just kind of lit up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My kids Pascal saw his picture actually on the slideshow after last time. And he was like, why do you have a picture of me on the presentation on your laptop or whatever? And I was like, oh, I was talking about you guys. All good things. All good. and none of you told him otherwise, right? Okay, good. Okay, then we're fine. But no, so then I talked to him about some stuff too, and I will say that he's just been actually just more clingy to me since I had that conversation with him. In a good way, I think, right? He's been super sweet and wanting to hang out with me and stuff, which was not a normal thing. I don't know. Anyone else?
I didn't do it all in one go, but as I noticed things, I tried to point them out, and anytime I would tell them something, they usually did it more. Oh, I really like how you were able to talk about this with your brother and share or whatever, and then they were like, ooh, okay, I'll do more of that. So that was kind of nice.
Yeah, the reinforcing of positive behaviors, right? And you don't need to give a sticker or a trophy. You don't need to do that. Just a comment from mom shows love, and it shows that you notice them. So many times I think that, they're just thinking that they're competing with these things and jobs, and they're competing with so much for your time. So, anyone else? All right, beautiful. If you didn't, I would encourage you to still do that, and to continue doing that, of course. It's not just a one-time thing, because it will mean an awful lot to them. All right, tonight, I wanted to think, who have you come in contact with? We're not talking contact tracing, but I am wondering, how many conversations do you think you've had with somebody over the last week that maybe even were just service conversations? So it could be even just something as simple as, hi, hello, how are you? Just in the last week, like while running errands. Just think about that for like 10 seconds or something. Where did I go? Who did I see? Okay, now the reason why I ask that is because I read that the average human being can actually have like as many as 50 interactions with people in a week just running errands. So those aren't even like your real interactions with people that you have conversations with. And that number blew me away. And then I thought, all of those different people that I meet and I'm only having these teeny little conversations with, do I take advantage of those conversations? Do I actually try to like develop any kind of relationship with any of these people? Because as a Christian, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing all the time? Is trying to win people over in a way for Christ? And I gotta be honest, when they say plastic or paper, I don't always say, hey, do you know about Jesus? It probably would look, I would feel really awkward. And yet, every person that we meet is a potential relationship that we then can hopefully have some impact on them. So, would you like it if you were a little more outgoing with other people? Carly's like, no, you should not be more outgoing. I love the fact that you're outgoing. I love. If you were even more outgoing, it would be terrible for the world. Would you like it if you were more outgoing about Jesus? Yeah, me too. Me too. Man, why is it that we live in a world where we just don't feel like we can go around and talk to people about him without first having even a relationship with someone? Right? Why does it matter if I don't know your birth date? I should still be able to tell you about the fact that there was a dude who died for you, right? And yet, in the world that we live in, we aren't really prepared to do that. And so I want you to think, how are you going to prepare your kids for the world? How are you going to prepare them to have those conversations? How are you going to prepare them to ultimately tackle all kinds of different things? Did you know life is hard? Yeah, me too. I figured it out not that long ago. It took me a while. I was a late bloomer. All right. So tonight I want to go back to where we started. That first week, we looked at Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1. By the way, I'm just going to do it a little differently. You know how every time I've run out of time, and then I was like, oh, there was something good. I was lying. There was never anything good. But I did have to skip things. And so tonight what I decided is I'd go straight to the Bible study, which is always the good part, and then I would save that video stuff for the end. Is that okay? Because it doesn't matter. That's what I'm doing. So, okay. But I made you think you had choice, and that's good. Okay. So, going to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1, it says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. That's one of my favorite Bible passages. I love the fact, too, that it's right there at the beginning of chapter 6, because I have it actually saved on a tab on my Chrome in my phone. And then it will play it for me. So I just go to Bible Gateway, and then I just click play, and then Max McClean, or whatever his name is, I don't know, something like that. But then he starts talking, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. So if Pascal is doing something, or Trinity, but that's very rare, then all I do is, children, obey your... I love it. I don't have to say it. And I go, thank you, Max. Thank you. And Pascal's like, yes, thank you, Max. But you know what I began to realize is that this passage is a command for kids. Are there some implications for the adults? So now when I hear it, it kind of stings me a little bit. I'm like, oh man, now I'm like actually starting to think and ponder on this passage. What's the implication for you as a parent? You in the back.
That you're doing right by your kids, that you're giving them the right choices to make.
Oh. Nuts. You mean we actually have to like work hard so that they actually obey and do the right things? Oh man. It's implicating that we should have like rules and boundaries. And I know what you're thinking. What? Did you just say rules and boundaries? Because culture today says that if you put any expectation on your child, any kind of limit, you're like crushing their little spirit, aren't you? Or you're like depriving them of their individuality in some way. I got news for you. That's not true. Do you have any examples of how someone else in society has stepped on your parental toes? I've got some. I've got some from my mom. Not my mother-in-law, she's delightful. My mom, man, she's the most judgy parent ever. Mom, quit it, I got this. She's fine. She's eating Cheerios off the ground, it's all right. No, I don't actually do that. But I had a woman, I remember we were out in public, and I had to put one of my kids in a timeout, and it was actually Trinity, but put her in a timeout, and she was sobbing. And Trinity, when you look at her crying, you know, my first thought is, you probably deserve that. Whereas every other person looks at her and they're like, why is this sweet little angel crying? And so I had put her in a timeout and I just like walked away, you know, because that's what you do as parents. There is a time to be neglectful. That's good parenting. It's like the balance between neglect and discipline. And then there was this sweet old woman who was very well-meaning who went up to Trinity and was trying to comfort her. And I was like, ma'am, step away from the child. She's toxic. You know? No, I didn't say that, but I just said, you know what? She's made a poor choice. And furthermore, I shouldn't even have to explain this to you, lady, because it's none of your business. But she's made a poor choice, and so she's just having a timeout right now. She just needs to think for a little bit. And the woman looked at my daughter like she was this like captive princess by some evil like dictator lord. And she looked at me like I was that evil dictator lord, otherwise known as the devil. Have you ever had that? Yeah. Oh, it's culture. Anytime. But I will tell you, there is absolute danger if we do not give our kids rules and expectations. What are those dangers? Maybe you know what they are. What could happen? Hooligans. I love that word. Just absolute hooligans. Yeah. What else? They could fall away from God. The worst thing possible, right? If there aren't rules, if there aren't limits, you know that those kids generally actually are less happy. Did you know that? Kids that don't have boundaries are actually less happy. And we think, but isn't that what kids want, is to not have boundaries? No, they actually crave them. They want limits. They want expectations. When I just jumped into this like weird job called the catch-all job, staff minister, I didn't know entirely what the expectations were, and my mind was swimming, and I thought I made a huge mistake. I am a person who likes to know what the expectation is so that I can see if I can at least try to maybe meet it. Okay? That's how people work. Your kids are the same. They're people too, though they might not prove it all the time. Also, would you believe that if kids don't have expectations, they are much more likely to make poor choices? Yeah, that doesn't really shock anybody. They become more willful, selfish. They become basically a burden to anyone who they spend time with because they don't learn social skills. They have a lack of respect for authority figures, which, of course, that's not a good thing either for jobs and the like. Yeah. There's a lot of danger out there if we don't set the rules and the expectations. Did you know that when kids turn 16, they are given a murder weapon called a car? That's one of the most frightening things ever. And I see past students that like pull up in this minivan and they're like, hey, Mr. Z, look, I'm driving. And I'm just going, ah, it's terrifying, right? Oh, But do we then just say like, well, kid, you're 16, here's the key to the car. Congratulations. Don't kill yourself. No, there's training. Driver's ed, it's important, isn't it? When I was a kid, I actually kind of wanted one of these cars. I don't know why. I think I was a real big dork. I'm starting to realize now I may have been slightly dorky. But they have like 2 sets of steering wheels and 2 sets of pedals. And did you know that they can actually, if they see your kid messing up, they can just take control? Pump the brakes, turn the wheel. How many of you wish you could always be there right by your child's side and just be like, whoa, honey, we're going to pump the brakes on that one, or we're going to turn away from that person? Yeah, the only thing is you can't. I'm really sorry. And in reality, is that what you want anyways, is to raise kids that are fully reliant on you making all of their decisions for them? If that's what you want, that's unhealthy. Okay? That's bad. There have been studies that have been done on different types of parents and their efficacy. Right here, we have a chart, quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. We have the y-axis, that's the one that goes up and down, everybody. Okay? That y-axis is love. Oh. And then the x-axis, which is horizontal, that is discipline or control. So you can see in quadrant 1, we have the permissive parent. This is the parent who doesn't have a lot of discipline. You see it's on the left, but there's an awful lot of love, right? That permissive parent loves their kids. They will say it. They will do everything that's possible for their child, except discipline them and put boundaries on them. Because God forbid we do that, right? And I know what we're thinking. We don't want to see our kids angry, or let alone angry at us. I don't want you to show your hand or anything, but bless you. But have any of you had one of your kids say that they hate you? It's like the worst thing ever. And you're like, you don't even know! And you want to go into this huge 2-hour sermon on why they're so blessed. But to have you know, and then you realize it would all be lies. But we don't want our kids to be angry. We don't want them to be upset. And so we feel that we should just remove the limits, the expectations, and the boundaries. However, what's been proven is that those kids actually, because they don't have limits or boundaries, they are left to question every choice that they make, which leads then to insecurity. So these kids oftentimes end up having self-esteem issues and a lack of security. That's not good, is it? No. Okay, quadrant 2, we've got neglectful parents. Low love, low discipline. These are the parents that don't maybe even have a lot of love for their kids, let alone want to show it, and they also don't care about their kids enough to put expectations on them. These are the ones that their relationships are going to be terrible. They are not going to have a lasting relationship with their children, and their kids are going to try and leave as soon as possible, right? I don't think any of you are in that quadrant. You know how I know that? Because you're at this Bible class. If you didn't have at least some love, you might be neglectful, but I believe that you have love for your kids, okay? Now, in quadrant 3, now we have the authoritarian. Think like drill sergeant, okay? This was my mother. This was totally her parenting style. These parents are just, they have maybe love, but they don't exactly know how to share it. Do you know what I'm saying? Did you have a parent like that? If you did, we can meet up sometime. We'll get a beer. We'll have some stories. But they're not sure how to express the love, but they sure know how to put expectations on kids. And those expectations are super high, right? And so what happens with these ones here is that these kids end up wanting to be extremely rebellious, right? They want to leave the house whenever they can, as soon as they can. As soon as they become 13, because by the age of 13, that's actually when we as parents, up until that point, we have the most influence on their lives and their choices. Yeah! My daughter just turned 13. She's lost. But I still have hope for my son, right? But at the age of 13, we're in a different phase. And then we start kind of developing our own opinions about life. And then those kids then fire those opinions back at the parent, and now all of a sudden, living in that house is a living hell because it's just constant bickering and fighting between the parent and the child, and then the kid ends up leaving, and that family too, oftentimes there isn't a lasting relationship. Everybody look at the top right quadrant. Oh, it's authoritative. It's not authoritarian. Okay, they're different. It's high love, high discipline. And these parents, there's that word fellowshipping. And when I saw that, I was like, no, I'm not going to be my kid's friend. Right? But that's not what it means at all. it actually means that the two of you are working together. Did you know that you and your child have the same goal in mind? You both want your kid to be successful in life, right? You both want your kid to get to heaven. You and your kid want that. You have those things in common. Common goals. So parenting really shouldn't be difficult then, right? Because they know you have the same goals that they do, and so they're never going to argue or anything like that. Nope. But those authoritative parents, they have lots of love and they have lots of discipline. These are the kids that are going to grow up with clear expectations and also with very stiff and firm consequences. The parent is not going to let them get away with anything. But at the same time, they're going to show them so much love that the kid is going to think first love, and then secondly, they're going to think about the pain. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. These kids have better coping skills, better relationships. That's the good one. All right, so now I'm going to ask you. Everybody, I think, has a quadrant that they slip into. Which quadrant do you slip into? I mean, I'm always quadrant 4. Always. I'm not. My guess is you don't slip into quadrant 2, but if you had to be honest with yourself, why don't you take 15 seconds, think it over, chat with your spouse, don't talk to yourself. That's just weird, and people think you're crazy. But then talk to your spouse, share what you think you slip into, and then maybe your spouse can correct you. All right? Take 15 seconds. Gillian, I fall into the permissive sometimes. Did you know that about me? Oh, you did? Okay. Any crazy revelations? You're like a 7? That's quadrant means 4, man. Like okay, well anyways, now comes the part of the Bible class that you don't always want to hear. And I'm going to let you know it cuts to my heart too. Do you hate your kids? It's always supposed to be the same answer. I didn't say do you like your kids or dislike your kids. I said do you hate your kids? Okay, good answer. Oh, goodness, wow. All right. Well, let's see what God says. In Proverbs 13:24, whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to, whoa, that was crazy, is careful to discipline them. Oh, boy. I don't think you hate your kids. I said that before. I think you all love your children. But did you know that God is pretty clear, doesn't pull any punches or sugarcoat it? If you don't discipline your child, even though you know you should be, it's actually an act of hate. Oh, when I read that, I was like, oh. By the way, when it says spares the rod, it's not necessarily meaning that you really do have to do corporal punishment. I know that's what people they look at that and they're like, see, I can spank you. That's not what that means, okay? It just means that parents need to be disciplining their kids. Yeah, that one really kind of made me a little sad when I read that, but it takes us to this word discipline then. I think it's a difficult word to define. Anyone have a good definition? Correcting. Oh, that is a good one. Well done. Curbing behavior. I like it. See, curb, it's like, it's that gentle thing you hit with your car, and then you just bounce back, like, oops. Right? Yeah. Oh.
It said before, it said careful discipline, so you have to be careful, and I think it's individual between each child also, that they're all receptive or taken in different ways because they're all.
I love that you said that. Every child is different, and they react to discipline differently. And there was that uniqueness, a woman referred to that in our last video. And that was so huge because different people's consciences are way more quick to respond than others. Like my daughter, if I go to her about something that she did that was wrong, she almost immediately is upset about it. She's in tears, you know. My son, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be an all-nighter. No, he's actually gotten a lot better too, but he's not as quick. His conscience isn't as fast to be pricked. So yeah, I think you're right. It is different based on your kid. Careful. I like it. Anyone else? Don't you also need consequences? I think you're right. So you're saying I shouldn't just tell them what to do or what not to do? Okay. You don't need to name any names, by the way.
He was being real bad one day, and like he kept hurting himself, and we kept telling him that was God punishing him. So.
Did you do it while you were also laughing? Did you?
But it's like every time he did something wrong, it's like he did that, and then he like ran into the counter and stomped his head.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is it true? Does God allow natural consequences into our lives based on our choices and actions? Absolutely. I mean, not to be crass, but that's what venereal diseases are, right? That was crass. Whoa, he just jumped that far? Yeah, I'm sorry, I really did. Okay? It's a direct consequence from your sinful choice. Yeah, kid. Just tell him next time, at least it's not gonorrhea or something. Don't say that. All right. Strike that from the record. We're not talking about that. All right. I will, yep. We're going to move on. So, the word discipline, I think a lot of different people could define it differently. And here's the thing. Even if you figured out how to define discipline perfectly, there's still so many opinions on how to carry it out. Right? Like, there are always people judging your parenting style. It happens. It's real. And so instead of looking at general public opinion polls, because nobody likes polling right now, I thought the opinion that I most care about is the opinion of God. And so I went to Hebrews. And when I went to Hebrews, I found in section 12, God is talking about discipline. But I want to give you a little context because, context is always good when it comes to Scripture. Otherwise, if a person is ever just giving you Scripture straight, like from one little section, you should probably question them a little bit, especially if it's me. But chapter 10 of Hebrews, in this letter, it basically has two things, a warning and an encouragement. And the warning goes like this: hey, new Christians, so, life isn't all roses. It gets tricky and tough, and God is still with you. But if you're going to leave, God is going to punish you. And that punishment is not going to just last a little bit of time. That punishment is going to be eternal. All right? That's the first thing. Ugh. But there's also the encouragement. If you persevere throughout this difficulty, God is going to bless you and give you the inheritance of the saints and the inheritance of His Son, because after all, that's what you are, a child of God. You get eternity in heaven. All right? Then, chapter 11, it's all a list of these different awesome Bible characters that you know and love who experience difficulty in their life and yet still remain faithful to God. Do you have an example? Do you remember that from Sunday school? Bible history lessons? Give me someone who faced some kind of difficulty but yet remained faithful to God. There was one on Sunday if you came to church and listened to Pastor Bodie. Wait, what? Daniel in the lion's den. You got it. You were listening. Wait, was that 2 Sundays ago? Maybe I wasn't listening. Yeah, last week was Daniel. It was Daniel again. Yeah. Oh, Joseph. Excellent. Yeah, Joseph. Man, that guy, I think he was probably a little bit of a butt too, if I'm honest. At the beginning, like, you're going to all bow down to me. But anyway, he had a lot of difficulty, jail and all that. Job. Yeah. Whenever he was talking about difficulty, there was that one guy. Everything went wrong. Yeah, that was bad. In the end, he actually did kind of turn against God and, But for so long, he even had a wife who said, just curse God and die, Job. Come on. Right? Can you imagine your spouse giving you that advice? Thanks, honey. I love how you always have my back. People of faith that have lived their lives remaining faithful to God even though they face difficulty. That's chapter 11. Now, chapter 12, then, is an encouragement for us to continue living our lives in a similar fashion. So, through any difficulty, be disciplined spiritually. And I'm going to say to you that here's where I kind of like fudged a little bit, because I do find that there are parallels to parenting in this, but it isn't perfect because he really is talking about spiritual discipline. Okay? All right. Let's look at it. Oh, and there are 5 key distinctions, things that he teaches us about discipline in it. Here's our first one. So, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Yeah, it says, for the joy set before him, he went on to the cross. That's obedience. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Why is discipline so important? Because it deters destruction, right? Is God serious about sin? Yep. Jesus went onto a cross. God is serious about sin. So, just to bring it down to a really basic example, your child, how many times do you say, look both ways before crossing the street? You're serious about that, right? A very simple thing, but yet that limit, setting that limit, that expectation, can deter them from destruction. Right? Any other simple examples you can think of that maybe I could use the next time I do this Bible study? Simple things that deter destruction. Don't lick that. That could probably work for a lot. I'm going to put that one down. Don't eat that. Don't lick that. Okay. Any others?
Don't play with a match or lighter.
Don't what?
Play with a match or a lighter.
Oh yeah, lighters and matches. Thank you. Great example. Lead paint. Our house is 1910. I'm sure there's lead paint. Well, don't eat that. I'm back. Okay. Deter destruction. All right? Second one from Hebrews chapter 12, verse 5. And have you completely forgotten this word of encouragement that addresses you as a father addresses his son? It says, my son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you. I found this section interesting because when I went back to the Greek in this part, there are 2 words that he uses here. The first one is discipline, and the Greek is yasar, and then rebukes, and that's yechach. I don't actually know if I said that perfectly well. I hope I did. But yasar and yechach, discipline God's actions towards you, and also yechach, his words, rebuking. And this goes to what Mr. Heilman was saying. Words and actions. Actions speak louder than words. We always hear that. And yet when it comes to parenting, it's both. Right? You need to have clear expectations and you need to have consequences. Would you agree? Okay. So, what happens then if parents don't ever get past the words? How does that affect the house?
Kids just expect you to keep counting and counting.
Keep what?
Counting and counting.
Keep counting? Oh, I see. Yes. Oh, I've seen that so many times. And I don't want to be the person that judges parents, but I also sometimes do. I just want to be like, ma'am, you said 3 and you're on 8. Don't you kind of want to do that? Because my kids are perfect. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You just keep going, spinning your wheels. You're miserable. The kid's miserable. But he thinks he's having fun. He's not. I was thinking about the number one example in my mind when it comes to parents who have words but no actions. And I thought from the Bible of that dude named Eli. Right? A priest. Eli was a priest. He was the high priest. He had 2 sons. Their names, Hophni and Phinehas. At least they weren't good names like James and John, so they were not in danger. I always told Gillian I was going to name one of our kids Hophni, and I was going to name the daughter Jezebel, but I didn't. Okay, but we have Eli here. Eli loved his boys. He loved his boys so much that he didn't have any boundaries for them. His two sons were stealing offerings that people were bringing to the temple, and they were seducing young women who were going to the temple in order to serve and worship, and they were having sex with them. Now, God went to Eli and said, your sons are doing this, and you know about it. You need to do something about it. And so what did Eli do? He went and he rebuked them mildly. He shared some words. That was it. No action. After that, God made a judgment against Eli and his family, and he said, in one day I'm going to cut your entire family line off. And he did. So they were going to battle. His two sons go to battle. They go against the Philistines, and the Israelites thought, hey, I know what we need to take with us, our good luck charm, the Ark of God, the Ark of the Covenant, the presence of God. He'll help us win this. God had already said you're going to lose. Don't take the Ark when he already said you're going to lose. But they thought, no, the Ark will be our good luck charm. They go out there. The Philistines not only slaughter the Israelite army, they kill Hophni and Phinehas. They take the Ark of the Covenant. And then when Eli gets word that all of this happened, he first hears about Hophni and Phinehas, and guess what his reaction is? Oh, no. Then he hears about the Ark of God. That's what I always found fascinating about the story. It's the Ark of God, when he finds out that that was taken, then he's surprised and falls off of his chair, snaps his neck, and dies. That's all one day. Is God serious about discipline, sin? Is he serious about words and actions? Now, I'm not saying that all of you, if you don't discipline your child with words and actions, America is doomed. But I am saying that that's what happened to the Israelite community, all because of that one parent who lacked enough love to put it into action. Right? You guys are like, yes, we get it. Can you please stop talking to us about that evil stuff? Okay, so that part of parenting then is we need to understand it really does have words and actions. All right, then, Hebrews 12:6, because the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his son. What does that teach you about parenting? About discipline? Yeah, the motive of discipline is actually to express love. Why does it seem so unloving then? The volume. Yeah, it's so true. It's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to discipline your kids because of the reaction that they have and the feelings of sorrow that they go through, and wrestling with the fact that you're the cause of it. That's difficult.
Did he just touch on something that all of you deal with? Feeling like you have caused this and now your child is in some kind of discomfort? I feel that. When I look at my kid and yeah. Will your kids actually manipulate and learn to manipulate your emotion? Yeah, they will. I'm sorry. Your kids will do that. Okay? I'm going to jump ahead because you brought this up. And then they say like, you don't love me. It's so hard, right? But I'm going to let you know something right now so that you don't ever have to feel that guilt again. You ready for it? Okay, here it comes. Parent consistently. You will never feel guilty again. That's it. It's the key to success. We're going to still mess up and it's not going to work. But parent consistently. If you give them a set of not reactionary but proactive expectations, and if you already give them a set of consequences, it should not be a surprise then when they get a consequence. This shouldn't even be happening. then really what it is it's just self-pity, right? And then when you see that, instead of being like, I feel so bad that you're hurting, you should be like, yeah, you hurt, right? Because then if your child is hurt by it, hopefully it actually means that it's having a spiritual impact on them, and it's changing their heart. And then later on you get to actually tell them, hey kid, I love you. This is why I'm doing this. We both have the same goal in mind. I want to see you be successful, right?
It can be challenging to find the right consequence that elicits that emotion,
Yeah.
because not all kids. I have a child.
Did you just say feel guilt?
I have a child
Sorry.
where if I can get him to cry, I know I have reached the right consequence, because otherwise the consequences just roll off.
You should just thank God that you have a kid that is so obvious. Because there are so many kids too that are just bullheaded, stubborn, and they will never ever relent or let you know that it hurts them. And you're like, I know it hurts you. Don't pretend like you don't care. So I guess just parent until they cry, in your case. And then you celebrate. High five, he's in tears. All right. Parenting win. But yeah, be consistent. They're making their own sinful, selfish choice then. So they chose a consequence. I have told my kids that repeatedly. I will say things, they hate it, but I'll say, you knew that was going to happen. You literally chose this. Right? It's not a surprise. As long as you as the parent are consistent and you mean what you say and you say what you mean. All right. So going back to before I had to change it all, because that guy said that really amazing thing. Yeah. Okay. We want to be loving and we're not sure how to do it. Right? But the motive is love. 7-9, endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you are not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you're not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us and we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and live? This section right here, it's beautiful. It talks about parenting with love. It also talks about the fact that you know that you have, that they are yours if you discipline them. If your kid, just to give you a little example, if your kid gets in trouble with neighbor kids, and then you find out that they all got in trouble and they were being hooligans or whatever, do you go over and you start chastising all of the kids? No. Yeah, I don't either. I would go and grab my kids and be like, what are you doing? Because they're yours. You discipline your own kids. You don't go and discipline someone else's kids. Sometimes people do. That's actually just deflection, and they're trying to make it so that it's some other kid's fault instead of their own kid's fault. That's a parenting tactic. It's not a good one. But we discipline our own kids because we love them. God disciplines us too because he loves us. And yet, it says, continuing on in verses 10 and 11, they disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good in order that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. And that's where I had this. It doesn't seem great at the time.
Question. So, if you come up to your kids and a group of kids, and they're all whipping a little puppy with sticks, you just be like, okay, my kids, let's go.
Well, I'd rescue the puppy.
You're not going to discipline the whole group?
I would rescue the puppy, and then I would take my children away, and then I would contact all of their parents. That's what I would do.
I'm on the other side, because I would holler at all the kids.
Now, I think that you went to a pretty extreme case, though. I mean, you went straight to animal abuse. So all these children are a gang of psychopaths, and
Something that commonly happens around our group.
that commonly happens. I'm so glad I don't live here. I thought this community was like Mayberry. Not anymore. Oh, you've taken a turn for the worse, this Howard's Grove. Yeah, in that instance, yeah, I would probably step in and do something. If someone is being hurt physically or emotionally, that's when I gotta jump in.
But like, what if it's your friends or your family, their kids, and you're the one that observes what went wrong? Wouldn't
Yeah.
you correct all of them? Or
Yeah.
oh,
God was like, yes. Okay. Yeah. So it comes down to sphere of influence and your authority. So do you share some kind of authority over those kids? I would say to a certain extent you do, just because of the extension of family or friends.
So when I run the Pioneer group, I'm allowed to. Like,
Absolutely. Those parents are literally relinquishing their parental rights to you at that time. Unless they're whipping dogs or something. But have you been in that situation where you've seen how your friend's parent or your sibling's parent, and you're like, ooh, that's not going to end well, but I don't feel like I can say anything, right? Just watch the train wreck happen. And then in the end, though, if discipline comes from love, do you love your niece and nephew? Yeah, I do. I do. So am I going to discipline them too? Sure, I would. And I don't think my sibling, they're way more permissive. Can I say that? I can say that, right? Well, I already did. So they'll never watch this. They'll never watch this. But yeah, so there are times where I do step in. But sometimes, though, too, I just basically chew out my own kids and I say things like, you know better than this? Because they do. And I don't know what the other kids know or don't know. And then I kind of hope the other kids overhear what I'm saying. Just say it a little louder. But save the puppies. Yep. Okay. So the result of good parenting is really actually short-term. This is the fifth thing to learn about discipline. It's short-term pain and long-term gain. That's discipline. Doesn't it fit in every instance that you think of when we talk about discipline and self-discipline? Whether it be that you're trying to lose weight or you want to learn another language, it's not like you can just be disciplined for a day. I mean, I thought I could lose 60 pounds in a day. It's not, it doesn't actually happen. Those pills, they didn't work. It's got to take self-discipline, and it's consistent. It's the same with kids. It's not going to happen in a moment. It's going to take time. But what I thought was really kind of cool is when I looked at this word right here, the word trained, it actually comes from the Greek, from the world of athleticism. That's where that word comes from. And I think I'm getting like some decline. Okay, sorry, some political call. Okay, but that word right there, it's like talking about something with athletics, and it actually has a flavor in the Greek of being a continual agony. That's what the training is. Have you ever trained for something and that's how you feel? I mean, what if I told you that I wanted like tomorrow to run a marathon? You'd all laugh and then really discourage me from doing it if you cared about me. Okay? Your heart's not going to take it, right? Yeah. All right. Then this part here, harvest of righteousness and peace. It takes time to see results. Any farmer knows that. When you plant a seed, you're not going to go and expect a harvest the next day. No, nothing. That's how my kids act when we plant seeds every day. Nope, okay. The next day, nope, okay, right? You know that, yeah. But it's the same with discipline. If you are caring and if you're consistent, they are going to reap a harvest of peace and of righteousness. Are you convinced of that? Are you convinced that if you actually raise your children to know the Lord and that you put limits and expectations on them, they are going to actually reap a harvest of peace? Good. You should be convinced. It is absolutely true. It is absolutely positively worth the wait. That's what kids really are. They really are a work in progress, and it's worth the wait. Have you ever been in a situation where a child wanted something and then they said to you, but my friend gets to do it? You had that? Yeah, I've had that. My friends get to do technology whenever they want. Oh, really? I don't know that that's true. Maybe I should call their parent and find out. Right? Kids will do that all the time because they're trying to just play the world's smallest little violin and get your little heartstrings going. But it's worth the wait. Because if you can train your children and discipline them, then ultimately you're going to reach your goal. And my goal for my kids, I don't want my kids to live life either fearful of punishment or to live their lives just wanting to do the right thing because it makes them look good. I want them to just have a love for Jesus that kind of overflows and spills into everything else that they do. And so they just naturally have good limits and boundaries on themselves. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Okay, we have a tendency, I think, to think of discipline as punishment. Like it's this one-time thing, timeouts, right? Oh, that's discipline. We think of discipline as being reactionary instead of proactive. But I like to think of discipline in a different way. And you guys had some good thoughts when we were talking about what discipline is. I think about the military. Ultimately, I think of discipline as being proactive, right? Punishment is like retribution for something that happened in the past. Discipline is actually working on setting expectations to shape the future. Yeah? So I think about the military. Military procedures. Do they have some routines? Holy cow. Yeah, their life is like scripted. Okay? But you know what? They run a pretty tight ship. Right? And so how did the military do it? Well, they basically looked at what they wanted. They looked at the outcome that they were looking for, and they reverse engineered it, and that's how they designed their training. It's the same with parenting. Look at what you want, reverse engineer it, and start your parenting from there. You've got to train them. It's not a day. It's not a day. So how does it happen? Well, basics of Christian discipline. I'm going to tell you some things right here, 6 of them. You can write them down if you want, but they're all perfectly common sense. First one is this. Routines. Teaching, I would always spend the first 2 weeks doing routines, practicing over and over and over again. We're really going to practice lining up again? Yes, we are! And this time we're going to get it under 10 seconds! Routines are important, okay? It's the same with kids at home. Now, I'm not saying that that's how you have to run your house. You could, though, if that works for you. But routines are extremely important. So that your children just can grow in their security and know that you have everything under control. And they know what to expect. Do you like that? I like that too. So do your kids. All right, the next one, explaining the consequences. Let them know ahead of time. Right? How many times do we talk to kids and instead of just saying don't do that, instead we should explain to them what's going to naturally happen if you choose to do that, and what am I going to do to you if you choose to do that? Right? All those consequences. And sometimes the consequences are positive. Explain those positive consequences too. You make a good choice, good things happen. All right, timeout for kids. That's important. We did a lot of timeouts. Okay? I still remember giving Trinity a timeout. How old was she? Remember when she refused to say thank you? Oh, my mom was so mad at me. She was sobbing. Trinity was sobbing. I would not let her get out of a timeout because she didn't say thank you. My mom was like, she doesn't know any better. And I'm like, yes, she does. And she did. After 5 minutes, she was like, thank you. And I'm like, oh, good, And then I gave my mom the eye. See? Okay. Timeout for parents. That's good too. If you're mad, get out of there. Okay? You don't ever discipline in anger, because then really what you're doing is you're punishing, right? Don't ever discipline in anger. Tag team. Honey, I'm going to have you take this one. Kid's on my last nerve, right? I'll be back. That's what teams are for. Reinforcing good behavior, the positive, like what Alicia was saying. Again, not stickers and trophies all the time, but just saying that you notice the good choices that they make. And there's a guy in the video that we'll see who talks about that too. And then lastly, law and gospel. Your house should be a house that is focused on God's word. And there are two main teachings, law, gospel. You're sinful, you're forgiven. Don't let your kids live in a household where all they hear from you is this law stuff, because they're going to rebel. They need to live in a house that they understand the rules and the consequences, but they also understand that they love you, and that's why you do it. Have a conversation every time, if you have time. If you don't have time to have a conversation over the consequence or the discipline that you did, then tell them, we're going to talk about that later, okay? But talk to them about it. Do you know why you did that? Do you know why you had to sit in your timeout? You did? Okay, good. Yeah, I knew you did.
Okay, this is kind of a dumb question, but like, everyone here has really young kids except maybe a couple of us.
Did you say really young kids?
Yeah, young
Yeah, your kids are lost. Lost cause.
So we got 12, almost 13, and you said something about your 13-year-old. I mean, does this stuff still work on them? Do we give up on them and just focus on the younger two? Or
Yeah, you got to cut your losses.
no, I mean, is that the first one? Is he gone?
He's beyond repair. I'm sorry. We tried, kid. You can go live with someone else now. No, he's absolutely not past help. You should still definitely be doing it. And the only thing is your consequences are going to have to change. For teenagers, what works the best is taking away social time. Okay? Now, they still need social time. But yeah, if you take away their outlets to their friends, that's what's going to hurt them the most. Generally speaking. And technology. Or both. Until they cry. Okay. So I want you to think for a little bit. Get the hamster turning. This is so cute. I'm that brown one. That's what happens whenever I try to use my brain. Especially late at night. It was a disaster right from the start. Okay. But I want you to take a little bit of time right now. I want you to think, what kind of person do you want your child to be, or children? But I don't want you to just think about, things like career or something like that. I want you to think about their person. I want you to think about how they're going to affect the people that are in their lives, that God puts into their lives. And I want you to think about how they're going to affect the entire world. Wow, that's a lot, right? What do you want for them? Write about that. Or think about it. Talk about it with your spouse later. Or talk about it now. Sorry, Brandon. Thinking time is now over. Boy, that was so peaceful. You guys were so quiet. There was just a little from over there. But other than that, lovely. Okay, so we're going to watch the video. It's really short. I only have like 6.5 minutes, I think, tonight. There just wasn't a lot on there that I thought was really great.
How do you protect your kids when they're not around you? What are they seeing in school? What are they picking up from friends? What's happening when I'm not around and when I can't be the guard? Those are kind of the questions I think that keep me up at night.
The relationships that they're going to enter into as far as like dating or the kids that they're going to hang around or teenagers they're going to hang around. I think those are my biggest fears. You know, who's going to influence them? You know, and are they going to stay grounded in the things that we've taught them?
To see my children with a love for God and serving God, to show the attributes of Christ and being givers and loving folks and really just making a difference in life. I believe those are the marks that will make me feel like we've really done a good job in raising our children.
My demeanor is be in the middle of what's going on. Over controlling, checking text messages, checking internet, but to what level is, you know, how do you manage yourself to stay at that appropriate level to give them enough leeway to make mistakes while they're still under your roof, that when they leave, and they make those mistakes, they're big ones.
That's being a single father, not being a part of their everyday life. My biggest fear is that he's gonna be persuaded, be influenced. I don't want him to make the same mistakes I did.
I struggle most with just not knowing ultimately what she's being exposed to, recognizing that there is danger out there that I can't protect her from, and I don't want to keep her locked away. I can handle whatever it is. If I know it, I can handle it. But when it's unknown, that's a real challenge for me.
Hope was starting junior high, and Olivia was starting kindergarten, and letting those two go was pretty brutal. I mean, it was emotional. That was definitely the hardest thing I've done as a parent so far, just letting them grow up.
Some of the things that the world is going to try to teach them, materialism, or if the world tries to, you know, influence them with pornography, something like that, it just scares me. And to know that that's something I've got to teach them in advance, that these things are out there, but ultimately they will destroy you.
When you see them doing the right thing when they don't know anyone's watching, I recall seeing one of my sons at a scouting outing when no one else was really paying attention, and one of the kids was lagging behind badly and really struggling to carry his pack. And he went back and grabbed the guy's pack, put it on his shoulder, and went on and carried it for him. So you see that, and those are the kind of moments that make you proud as a father and feel like you're doing the right thing.
Welcome to our final session of It Starts at Home. Over the last 5 sessions, we've looked at some of the core issues in building a legacy of faith at home.
We talked about the impact of the parent's relationship to God, the model of marriage on a child's understanding of the gospel, how to connect with their kids, and we've watched real-life parents trying to be intentional.
A few months from now, our oldest child will be getting married. The parenting years have just flown by. Before you know it, your children will be grown up and leaving to start families of their own. In this session, Matt Chandler will look to Scripture and talk to us about creating a legacy that lives on long after the kids leave our home.
Before we hear from Matt, though, let's listen to Christina's story. She's setting an example that her kids are never going to forget.
Every day on the way to school, I stop at Sonic. When you do that every day for a whole school year, you get to know the girl behind the window. That started the relationship with Sandra. And I'd check in on her. She was a single mother trying to make it. I lost touch with her for a few months. My job changed. In those 3 months, I was doing my morning Bible study, and this devotional I was doing said to consider 3 people in your life who didn't know the Lord. I couldn't come up with 3 people. And I became completely convicted that my circle of influence was too small, that there were people around me that were hurting to know Jesus. I didn't see him, I was too busy. So I simply prayed that God would open my eyes, and if I saw people with a need, I promised God that I would do whatever I could to help be the hands and feet of Jesus to them. 2 days later, I stopped at Sonic, and Sandra was there, but she was in a world of hurt. She and her kids were living on the street. So my family and I started trying to meet her needs, tried to find her housing. We helped her get a better job. But a single mom working all those hours, she had a hard time getting everything done. She'd put her laundry in the back of her car, and I'd go by in the afternoon to pick it up and do her laundry. I just wanted to make it a little bit easier for her. And hopefully in the process, show her Jesus. It has changed everything about my life and my family. When I pray with my kids every night, my daughter and I pray thankfulness for the blessings we're given, but also every night we pray that God makes us grateful people, because that's what it's shown me is how blessed I am. And because of the amount of blessing, how responsible I am to not hoard the blessing, but to give it away. And it astounds my kids. The other day we went through the drive-through, and out of nowhere, the girl who often fills our drinks in the afternoon, out of nowhere she said she needed a bed. And I said, well, I can ask. I can ask around. I can see if somebody's got a spare bed. As we drove away, my son looked at me in astonishment. He goes, Mom, why do these people ask you these things in the drive-through? And I told him, it's because I prayed that God would show me the needs that people have around me. So if it means the girl in the drive-through needs a bed and I can take her a bed and tell her about Jesus and why it is that I want to love her, then that's what we do.
I want to share that part because I just think it's super cool. I love that last part. It's incredible. Some things that stuck out to me. Well, one, the dad who was like, well, I can't lock her up. I just thought that was pretty clever. Like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that, but sometimes we do want to do that. The other thing that struck me is that, wow, they go to Sonic a lot, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying. You all thought it, right? And then did you notice on their table there were Sonic cups and Dairy Queen cups? Whatever. I mean, it's their way of evangelizing. So, but anyway, the dad said, when you see your kids doing the right thing, it makes you feel good, doesn't it? I just was wondering, do you have any examples like that? I don't have any, so I was hoping. I do, but I'm not going to bore you with them. If you just, I would just encourage you, as you leave, think about that question, because talk about something you could share with your kids to reinforce positive behavior. When you see them doing the right things, just gets you. The mom, we're responsible to not hoard blessings. When she said that, it was just like mind blown, right? How often do we hoard our blessings? So when we're talking about disciplining our children, we're not just talking about behavior and curbing negative behavior. We're also talking about shaping lives of service and of love for Jesus and for other people. Show them at home how to do it. At our house, we just have, like they have their little save bank and their spend and their church. Do you have those too? Yeah. Think about that. There's a really simple way to already start teaching kids to think about service. And then talk about a powerful and dangerous prayer. There were people around me that were hurting to know Jesus, and I didn't see them. I was too busy. I simply prayed God would open my eyes, and if I saw people with a need, I promised God that I would do whatever I could to be the hands and feet of Jesus to them. And it's kind of a little strange making that promise to God when we hear that kind of thing. We kind of bristle up. But God, it's dangerous. That's a dangerous prayer because that's the kind of prayer that God wants to answer and say yes to, right? He wants to do that. Pray with your kids that you would be able to, as a family, find some way to share the love of Christ with someone else. And so that's what you're going to leave with, and that's the think about it section. I'm not going to have you do that here, but you may even want to ask your kids to be part of the conversation. What is it that your family could do to share the love of Jesus with somebody? Now, right now, I happen to know Mindful Moms have these really cute activities with turkeys. That's going to shut-ins. That's really precious. Maybe you do that. Maybe you actually know of a need that you could provide for somebody. Maybe you know of someone that needs some food, needs some clothes. Think about that with your kids. Maybe you just know someone who needs encouragement or just a little bit of your time, right? Then give that to them. Maybe you know someone who would just love a handwritten note. Send it to them. So when we're talking about discipline, I think so many times it comes across as just being so negative and oppressive. Discipline is actually all about freedom. It's all about freedom to do things that we know are pleasing to our God. All right, so, well, that was that. I hope that you guys have walked away with a little something from these last 6 weeks. As we've been talking about building a legacy of faith, the fact that it starts at home, the fact that you have kids that are always watching you and that you get to shape their faith and the future that they have with Jesus is incredible, right? And I thought we should close with prayer. God, thank you so much for the incredible blessings that you give to us through our children. We are humbled and honored to be chosen to actually raise these young people to know you and to prepare them for a world that doesn't always like you and doesn't always like his followers, but yet we know that you promise you are not only going to be with us, but you are going to be with our kids. We know that one day we will maybe not be by their side on earth, but yet we know that ultimately we will be reunited with them to be by your side for eternity. In your name we pray. Amen. If you didn't already, take a cupcake. And that's that. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.